Good afternoon, Europeans, good evening, Asians, and good morning, Americans. Today is Friday, we are approaching the weekend, and today we have to celebrate the French. I know, it stinks to be doing that, why would we ever? However, today is the 218th anniversary of the self-coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte. Also, self-coronation as emperor runs in the family, because just 47 years later, his nephew, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, also crowned himself emperor. Much shorter and much less of a successful reign of the nephew compared to the original, to be said. Also to be said, the main man was actually Italian, so we might as well call him Napoleone Bonaparte, because that was his name. Now, for today, we continue our informational set of videos after starting the whole thing with a general look on what to do in the first week, in the first couple of weeks of the expansion. Then we followed it with what to do to get the gear in the first couple of weeks of the expansion. So for today, we're gonna go a little bit more in detail in the big zone, in the big elite endgame zone of the Obsidian Citadel. What is in there? Exactly what do you have to do in there? Because once you get in the place, it gets a little bit confusing. You know, you get bombarded by quests. Most of them are elite quests, which will require you to be in a group and defeat some pretty dangerous enemies. You will find that you have to split your choices between two different characters, and then as you roam around the zone, you will start seeing all these bars filling up with some random numbers. You have no idea what they mean, and then you also have events popping up all over the place, but you have no idea how exactly does it work, how exactly do they happen. So, for today, we explain exactly how and what goes on in this area and what you should do, depending on what you will hear in this video, what you prefer to go for, based on what I'm going to tell you right now. The easiest thing to start with is the fact that in the zone, you will get asked once a week if you want to choose your allegiance with Wrathion or with Sabellian. Now, shameless plug-in to my stream, we in here are Team Sabellian only. We don't accept Wrathion simps in this establishment. However, once you have chosen your preferred candidate to become leader of the Black Dragonflight, your weekly quests for the week will award you rep with that specific faction, semi-faction, small faction, sub-faction, so to speak. Now, once you have chosen your main guy, you will get the weekly quest to turn in the Greater Obsidian Key. Go around, kill mobs, get a bunch of key fragments and key framings, put them together into a key and turn it in. The first turn-in will give you a bunch of rep. 150 with the Sabellian or Wrathion faction, and then 50 to Valdrakken reputation. After that, however, you can continue to repeat this process of creating keys from killing mobs and then turning them in for rep. This is endless, it has no cap, you can continue to do it for however long you want to grind the entire zone. There is, however, an extra, a wrench in the plans, because after you have turned in the first key, the greater key, you can then choose for your following keys to turn them in to whoever you want. You're only, let's say, forced to get the turn-in with the main guy you chose in your first key. From every key following that, you can turn them in not just to Wrathion or Sabellian, but also to Bazentus and to Aegis. These are going to be the four main guys you can do activities around in the zone. Because, as you might have noticed, as you go around the area and you find these type of bars filling up, you have one for Wrathion, you have one for Sabellian, and then Bazentus next to his forge, which you might have seen as you were leveling, and perhaps the one seen the least is Aegis, because Aegis is all the way to the side of the zone and often gets ignored. However, these progress bars that fill up around these four NPCs are of course filled up by turning in keys. Now, don't be dismayed by looking at the numbers, 10 or 20 keys required. These are zone-wide. They are not personal to you. These are going to start events in the entire zone, so every player can contribute to filling up the bars every day. Each and every one of these events will be slightly different, but will result in a similar finish, which is rep being given. Delivering 20 obsidian keys, the repeatable ones, to Wrathion will finish the Vault Barrier rune filling up of the bar and start the Clearing the Vault event, which is very simply spawning a rare, a big scary spider, in the vaults down below, which you go down, you defeat the rare, which is a group rare, you can't solo this guy. You defeat the rare and you get a whole bunch of rep, a whole bunch of tokens, some idle supplies, etc, etc, and the main reward for this quest is 250 rep with Wrathion. Then you can turn in 20 keys with Sabellian and do just about the same thing. Start the Death's Shadow quest, which will spawn the rare Death's Shadow. You defeat the rare Death's Shadow, and you get 250 rep with Sabellian. The extra comes in with the other two guys, because you can turn in 10 of the keys, not 20 like Wrathion and Sabellian, but 10 of the keys to Bazentus and start the event Forging the Answer, which will basically have you go around with an empowered blade forged by himself to kill a bunch of mobs. Once you have killed enough mobs to have tested the blade, you can turn in the quest and gain 100 rep with Wrathion and with Sabellian at the same time. Aegis will have a very similar thing. Once you have repeatedly turned in 10 of the keys, he will start the Breaking the World event, which will spawn a rare, Morchok, right down his puddle of lava. You defeat Morchok, you get 100 rep of Wrathion and Sabellian at the same time. Now, the important thing to know here is that 20 keys with Wrathion or Sabellian will give you 250 rep with one of them, whereas 10 keys repeated twice, so 10 keys and then 10 more keys with Aegis and Bazentus will give you a total of 200 rep with Wrathion plus 200 rep with Sabellian. So you get way more rep if you actually just do the events on the side rather than turning in the keys to the two main guys. This is only if you're trying to level them up in their faction, in the rep at the same time, rather than just focusing on a single one of the two. Now, why would you focus on a single one of the two? What's the point in leveling up both at the same time? What about what most players will want as an answer as they have went through this, which is, what is the loot though? What are the rewards? Why are we even doing this for? So, let's start with the loot in terms of gear, because there are only 2 pieces of gear available in here. I haven't pointed them out in yesterday's video about gearing up, because they are quite more grindy to get, quite excessively grindy to get, so I just let them in a corner. But you do have 2 pieces of gear you can get from this faction. So let's just start with the reputation levels. Reputation levels with these 2 at the same time will be split between Acquaintance, Cohort, Ally, Fang, Friend, and True Friend. The first thing to point out about rewards is that there is quite a good amount of shared rep rewards, in the sense that as long as you get to that level with one of them, you can get that reward, which also includes the gear. You have the Obsidian Collar, which is a 389 item level necklace, as well as the Obsidian Cape, which is a 398 cloak, which are going to be at Fang reputation level and Friend reputation level for either of the 2, no matter which one. After this, very early on, in fact, Cohort rep is something you could be in already this week if you have grinded even just a little bit. Is going to be the ensemble, the male battle gear ensemble for your character, so that's very early to get an entire armor ensemble. After that, you have the coolest things you can get towards the later stages of the rep are going to be the armor and scale customization for your dragon. Now, to make it short, this is your base dragon, your base green drake. Once you have gotten the rewards from this faction, shared between Wrathion or Sabellian, it will look like this. So you get to have black scales on your dragon, you get to have black and golden armor on your dragon as well. So that is perhaps the coolest thing you can get as you focus Wrathion or Sabellian. This is the reputation reward that is shared amongst the 2. When it comes to the personal, specific rep rewards to each and every one of the 2 guys, Wrathion is, I believe, losing out a little bit, because Wrathion doesn't really have a whole lot. They do have a whole bunch of possible cosmetic rewards in terms of weapons, from shields to staves to one-handed and two-handed weapons. These are the same type of models that you can earn from something we have mentioned yesterday, from the Cobalt Assembly rep. They also sell these transmog-looking weapon pieces, except a different color. So these are the type of rewards you can get from them. The special one is, I said, in Sabellian's favor, because Sabellian also gives you an entire new ensemble of armor, the Sabellian's Battle Gear Cloth armor. Basically what he is wearing. That's what you can get at ally level with Sabellian, that Wrathion does not give out. Perhaps because Wrathion doesn't have too easy of a model to copy for most races, so they didn't want to give it out to players. Wrathion instead has the Armor of Handless Cloaks, which drops a wardrobe on the floor that grants you a random cloak cosmetic appearance when interacted with, which can bring back, for the record, iconic cloaks, such as the Mist of Pandaria legendary cloaks effects, for example. So that actually might be quite good, as long as you can actually get the right cloak, the right cloak to get the effect on. Many players might get the nostalgic feel when using this one from Wrathion. This is very, very early because it is at cohort rep level, which is the second rep level, which you should be getting at very, very early on in your reputation grind. So it will be quite easy to obtain. Now, with this over, these are the activities you can have in the zone itself, besides just grouping up with a bunch of people and just mowing down mobs there endlessly. As you keep grinding and you keep collecting key fragments and key framings to turn into actual keys, those are your choices to turn in these keys in. Do you want Sabellian rep for these type of rewards, or do you want Wrathion rep for these type of rewards, or do you want to try to level them both up at the same time because you want kind of both of the type of rewards they offer? And for that, you have the two extra guys, Bazentus and Aegis, that you can turn in your keys for to give you split rep amongst the two. It's recommended still to just help or participate in all of the different events every week, because they will give you, at least once a week, they will give you the rewards for the first time, instead of just focusing on a single type of turn-in, ignoring the other 3 types. So it's still good, it's still better overall to try to finish all of the events at least once. But besides that, this is pretty much all that's available in this zone. It's a majority of cosmetic rewards for both your dragon effects, and your dragon armor, as well as yourself, with a couple of different armor ensembles for you to obtain, the special cloak function from Wrathion rewards, and then a couple of items if you really want to grind and you really think you need a 389 or a 298 piece of gear this early for this amount of grind, then you can fight for that as well. This was all that we were talking about for today from the seat of the Black Dragonflight. That's what is available in this elite grinding questing zone. And now I can just leave you to the rest of the start of your weekend. As usual, we are starting our goodbyes by thanking all of my Patreon supporters for supporting and for contributing to the growth of myself and this channel. Very much appreciated. What will also be appreciated is the support in non-monetary expenditure ways, like for example liking and commenting down below on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Those are still very much free ways of supporting. Lastly, you can also find and support me in other ways and locations, like following me on Twitter, as well as supporting me on my Patreon, which will give you access to my Discord server as well. And nowadays, I am also found on Twitch, usually streaming past 10 p.m. from European times, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and 4 p.m. onwards Eastern US time zones. With this out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I'm split between going out or not. I feel like if I go out, I really don't want to because I'm cozy inside, but if I don't, I feel like I'm going to regret it later.